Okay. All right. So I think we're rolling. Hi again, everybody. David Kim here and Devin Wong.
Devin Wong here. And today we got a special guest.
Yes, we are so pleased to have with us today Kelly Marsh with Cornerstone Home Lending. And we obviously work together a lot with Kelly. And I just have to say, tell the story, Kelly, I hope you don't mind, about how we first met and started working together. And I will always remember this, especially now after, having kids. Well, not me personally, but, being a father, is I had clients that were in a transaction and we were 17 days into this transaction, and the lender, who was a family friend, ended up dropping the ball and telling them, hey, I can't do this loan for you. And we were supposed to be removing contingencies when we found that out. And so anyhow, in a panic, I called Kelly just because I had heard other people say great things about Kelly. And Kelly, poor Kelly, had just gone on maternity leave. So she just had this new baby at home, and I'm calling her with this emergency saying, can you help us? And she wasted no time. She started cranking on that thing. I think it was like weird hours of the night too. She was like emailing and responding, and she was able to get this loan, I think, approved, underwritten in like 10 days or some crazy amount of time. Anyhow, it was enough to where we asked the seller for an extension, and Kelly fully met that extension timeline, and we were able to close on the deal. A deal that I thought was almost dead in the water, and Kelly resurrected it. So anyhow, that gives everybody kind of a firsthand testimonial of her work ethic. And anyhow, Kelly, we're so happy to have you.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. And guess what? Jalen, my son, who I had at that time, he will be 10 on June 23rd.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
He'll be 10.
I can't
Yeah,
believe...
I kicked him out of the house right now, so they're not here.
Okay. All right. Well, we wouldn't mind the disruption, especially with him. So I feel like I know him at this point, going 10 years back. I can't believe it's been 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years. Crazy.
Time flies.
Crazy. Yes, I love, and it goes right back to you guys. I love working with you guys as well. I know clients are going to get the best advice, service. You guys are really a phenomenal team, and I trust clients with you 100%, and your clients love you. So it really goes right back to you. I can't say that enough.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, again, we appreciate it. We love having the cohesiveness and the collaboration, and it always feels good when you're referring somebody to somebody who's like-minded, and you just can have that trust that they're going to be taken care of. So anyhow, I'm really glad that you were able to work with us even when you were on maternity leave. You're a rock star for that.
Yep. Yeah, I think I was on maternity. I was put on bed rest, and then I had Jalen the next day, and then I was working. It was pretty funny.
Yeah. Wow. Anyhow, kudos to you. And yeah, I'm glad that we were able to make that connection. And gosh, 10 years later, we're still doing it.
I know, crazy.
So crazy. So, hey, maybe while we have you, you want to tell us a little bit about what's going on with lending these days? And again, these days meaning in these coronavirus times?
Yeah. I mean, definitely we have seen a lot of changes. Has it been like 2008, 2009, where it was a real credit crunch? There's been some similarities. The biggest change we saw is really some credit tightening. Now it's kind of settling in, and it's becoming kind of the new norm for us in our guideline world. But jumbo financing, we were seeing over the last couple of years a lot of kind of what we call Alt-A products, bank statement loans, some kind of alternative loans that would really help people that didn't fit into that traditional box. Well, what we saw is that market, the investors that were lending that product really kind of froze. And so we saw a lot of changes in that kind of market. which really was for jumbo kind of alt A products. Now that doesn't mean that jumbo loans are not happening. So I want to make sure I don't mislead your listeners, but there is jumbo financing happening. It's just really hard to find with 5% down. So really it's, 20%. We started seeing equity lines. We might have been hearing that equity lines, some banks stopped doing equity lines. Some of the sources we use tightened their credit parameters. And really it's all about risk. It's all risk-based right now that we're seeing. The unknowns of what is going to be the impact of COVID with employment, with the forbearance. We could definitely talk about forbearance later down the line, in a couple minutes, but, is lending still happening? Yes. We've had record months as a company, as a branch here. We've closed record level transactions. Now, a lot of those are refis because the rates are so good. So it's a really, really great opportunity. And as a team, we really focus on helping these families save, get the money out for home improvements. We're closing purchase transactions, believe it or not. I mean, I know you guys are busy. We're definitely continuing to close purchase transactions. So, yeah, I mean, I could go on, but ask me if you have any questions with that first.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, we were talking about this before we started recording, but yeah, we're seeing things sort of ramp back up. Right when the whole, shelter in place started, it seemed like everything went on pause, and then things are definitely starting to tick back up, and, people are out there making offers, even some multiple offer situations out there.
Yeah, one question on that, Kelly. So obviously in the short term, with some of these creative loans going away, there will be some buyers that are just left out of the market right now. But do you think long term, not having some of those more creative loans out there might actually lead to a more stable market in a sense, because you're just having very sound purchases happening?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really our specialty, so we haven't seen a real shift in our clientele because that's not something we really specialized in. Did we have the product? Yes, but we didn't have that client need. I do, part of me, some of it's a little unfair. I think some of the product that was coming out was still very safe. It's just, self-employed people that are able to write their expenses, to flow their business and write off deductions and stuff like that. But I think it could be a little while before we see that come back. So it will impact a certain buyer pool, and that's, I don't know that we're we're such a jumbo market in Santa Barbara, right? But I don't know how much we're really gonna know how that's gonna impact us for maybe a couple more months. And it might come back. The equity lines, you might see those equity lines. Everybody used the word suspended. We suspended our equity line product. We suspended this. It's not gone. We just suspended it. So I don't know if that, it's temporary, but what does that really mean? I don't think we can tell how long temporary is going to be.
Right. And I think everyone's hoping that some of that might start coming back now that, again, we're starting to see things loosen up a little bit more. What about things that somebody who's just, in a position where they're wanting to make a purchase, what are some of the best things they can be doing right now to put themselves in the best position for that, especially if the market is starting to get competitive again? Yeah, I'm sure everyone would want to know that, what some tips are.
The best tip I can give is to get pre-approved. Know your options. You should never feel obligated. You should never feel pressured by a lender. I mean, we're here, and my whole thing is educate. We're here to educate, to really explain to clients, what are your options. Now more than ever, I've always been a fan of being pre-approved, not writing offers, not looking at properties until you really truly know your numbers. Since there are some limitations on loan products, you want to get pre-approved and take it one step further, which we've done together with clients. I'm a big fan of it, is get fully approved. So go through underwriting, get approved, have all your boxes checked, the income credit. One thing I will say is that, you know, getting pre-approved now, if anything changes with your employment, because there still is things happening with employment, communicate. We're your friend. We want to help you, and you can tell me anything, because my job is to advise you on how to do it, how to make it work. So getting pre-approved, knowing the numbers. We have a great side-by-side analysis we send to clients that, you know, we run different purchase prices, and it's just really helpful. It's just an education. You don't have to do anything with it. It's not going to cost you. It's really just education. So.
And from a real estate standpoint, I'll explain why that's so valuable. Taking it from the pre-approval to the fully approved status is we actually are working together with a buyer who's trying to make offers right now. One of the ones who keeps missing out in these multiple offer situations. And one of the huge benefits of being fully approved with Kelly is they can make an offer that is as close to an all cash offer as possible, meaning they don't have to make it contingent on the loan because it's already been through underwriting. It's already fully approved. They do probably want to still have an appraisal contingency because they're going to need to get that, but we can shorten that to 7 days. So where in a standard offer, you're usually giving yourself 21 days to get a loan approved, get that appraisal approved, to be able to say as a buyer, I don't have any loan contingency because my lender's already vetted all that, and I just need a short amount of time to get an appraisal. I mean, that's about as close to an all cash offer as you can make.
Yeah, and one more note here, you know, we're in the coronavirus times right now, and these pre-approvals have been one silver lining, right? You have the sellers who may not want to open the doors to their property to a lot of buyers who are just kicking the tires, maybe not pre-approved. So we're seeing a lot of listing agents almost require that you provide either proof of funds or, you know, pre-approval before they'll even show the home. So from a realtor perspective, that's actually been kind of a nice thing because we kind of vet buyers a little bit quicker these days, and that business is flowing into you guys, Kelly.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a team, like we all work as a team, including the client. We're all on the same team. And yes, I've had a lot of requests for that as well, where I can't go in and see this property without the pre-approval letter. And if anything, that's a really beautiful thing, because do you want, as a seller, people just walking through your property looky-loos that aren't ever going to buy? I mean, so in a way, it's kind of a cool, there are some really good things coming out of this. And I think that's one that, you know, maybe that'll stick. I'd be a fan for that, because I think it really helps you guys, you know, not waste your time when, you know, it really is up to the buyer needs to know, what is that payment going to cost them? You know, and sometimes it's out of their, you know, they really want to make it work, but realistically it doesn't work. But here's what would work, and you run the numbers that way.
Yeah. And is there anything that you would, we talked about, you know, getting pre-approved as something you should absolutely do. Is there anything buyers should be steering clear of when they're thinking about getting into a home soon?
One thing I was going to say, you brought up about the appraisal. We are seeing, okay, my dog's having a nightmare, and if you hear a dog in the background, is that funny or what? Okay, he's like kind of barking. I can hear him. That's really funny. Okay, one thing is appraisal waivers. We are seeing a lot of appraisal waivers. We have a transaction right now in Ventura, and it's a purchase, and he got a waiver. And we always ask the client, like, do you want an appraisal? Because, you know, an appraisal feels important, you know, on a purchase to some people. And he's like, nah, I'll save the, you know, $550. I don't need the appraisal. I feel good about it. And so we actually didn't even do an appraisal on a purchase. And we, you know, we have gotten other waivers, and the client chooses to do the appraisal, which, you know, everybody teach their own. And I don't know how you guys would advise on that, but we give the client the choice. So we are seeing a lot of appraisal waivers.
So that could, if somebody decides to go that route, that could truly be just on the same level as making a cash offer.
Yes, it's property address specific, and we're not going to know if we get a waiver until we run the loan through automated underwriting. And this really is going to apply to the Fannie Freddie loans. Right. So just know it's not going to get a waiver on a jumbo loan. You're not going to get a waiver on an FHA or VA loan. So it is a select amount of loans, but across the countrywide, that's the most common loan is a Fannie Freddie loan.
Right.
The most common.
And do you see those appraisal waivers happening more maybe in condos or PUD neighborhoods where it's a little bit more, simple to compare house to house?
I haven't. I've really, I'm super analytical, and I've been trying to find the trigger of what gets a waiver and what doesn't get the waiver. It is so random. You think you're going to get the waiver and you don't. You don't think you're going to get a waiver and you get it. It's fascinating. Sometimes it's like a loan to value tweak, like you just tweak in another value and you get it. It's been kind of fun, actually. We celebrate, like we get all excited as a team, we got a waiver. So it's, I'm like, ooh, try to run it with this, try to run it a little higher so we can get a little better price. I mean, so it's been kind of a fun game, fun mortgage game, pricing game to help the customer, of course. So.
Well, that sounds good. I mean, you're on kind of the cusp of all these changes, and especially changes that are just going to help the buyer's chances moving forward too. Speaking of which, you talk about working with your team. How have you and the team been working through the pandemic? I know you're very productive, so.
Yeah, what's really cool is that we have had our record month. We had a record April and we beat April, and we had a record May. We're probably going to be, we're beating April with May. We might beat it in June.
Wow.
My team, I have spent years and years developing myself as a human being and developing myself as a leader, as well as really pouring into my team. I mean, I believe it. In order to have a world-class client experience, you have to have a world-class team. And my number one client is my team. So where I have felt that has shined and shown is through this pandemic. And we immediately went remote. We're actually, there's a lot of people within our company that are remote. Underwriters, our closers, they all work remote. So when this was kind of starting to happen, and some of the companies like Procore started going, home, everybody sent home. I think that was like March 5th, maybe March 5th, Thursday. And I remember, because the rates were doing so well, I just decided everybody just go home. Just go home, work remote, and we've not been back since.
Wow.
And we've been able to hit records, and the team has done amazing. We do some fun Zooms. We've had some Zoom. We do every other week team Zooms. I give out prizes for best background, best costume, best hairstyle. Like, I make it fun. Really checking in with the team. How are they feeling? I mean, I think that's really important. There's a lot of unrest and fear, and we're human, and it's been stressful. So I've continued to do one-on-ones. I'm a huge meeting one-on-one person. I know you guys know Sarah Caputo, and I've learned through her over years and years of working with her, and just really continuing to stay connected. So, which is important.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up Sarah. I mean, David and I have looked at you, Kelly, and your team, and been really, impressed with the process you have and how smooth that is for clients. And so yeah, we met with Sarah a couple times, and we tried to work on our top triangle stuff. And I think
yeah, that's right.
I think you're probably a really good example of getting your process in place so that you can withstand things like this, right? And maybe even work even more efficiently down the line.
Yeah, I mean, and now that things are opening back up, I was talking to a couple team members today, and I'm like, I'm not in a rush. I have had clients, like most clients, are really comfortable. I mean, we've done Zoom meetings, phone calls, email, like we can do everything, face to face. I think there is still that wonderful human connection where it's hard to get that in a Zoom, but you can get close to it. And I can share my screen. And like I said, I have that really great side-by-side analysis software that is really helpful. So that's what I'm going to show clients, even when they're in my office. I'm not handwriting anything. I mean, we're looking at data on my screen, and I'm sending it to them so they have it. So yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate the compliment. I've really, really worked hard. Again, how can I provide an amazing experience if I don't have an amazing team behind me? And that's, with me, not behind me. That's not the right word to say, with me. And so I really pour into my team.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it's very evident, again, like Devin said, we saw how your team dynamic worked, and we knew that you worked with Sarah Caputo, who, by the way, is a business coach, right? That would be sort of her title. And, you know, I think the first time we saw her speak at one of your seminars, then, you know, we ended up calling her to see how she could help us. And yes, we're working on the top triangle and getting
Top
out
triangle.
of the weeds.
Stay out of the weeds, stay out of the weeds.
Yeah. So a lot of those little nuggets definitely stick with us.
Yeah.
Let's circle back real quick, because you had mentioned it early on, the mortgage forbearance idea, because I know a lot of people, I was actually one of them who, when I heard about it happening, you know, we have our mortgages with Chase. And so I first called and they were like, don't call, you'll be on hold forever and you might get disconnected. So I just went online real quick and looked at it, and just through your online banking, it would give you the option, hey, do you want to apply for this mortgage forbearance? And it's really tricky, because the soundbite you might hear is like, oh, that means that you don't have to make payments for up to 3 months with an option to extend it beyond that. And then you have to click on that little tiny information button that tells you what that actually means. So I'll let you kind of explain maybe the catch behind mortgage forbearance.
Yeah, and just so you know, I mean, it does continue to change. So as of today, this is currently kind of what's happening but disclosure, next week and the weeks after, there could still be changes. But part of the CARES Act, this $1 trillion, you know, government package, stimulus package, had this automatic, you know, everybody that wants it without proving hardship. And that's the biggest issue, is that there was no requirement. This is like the unintended consequence. We've heard a lot of terms. That's one of the terms that we've heard. Unintended consequence is that you didn't have to provide any evidence of hardship. And there's a lot of statistics coming out that there's a good chunk of the loans that are in forbearance that they weren't negatively impacted by COVID. And so that's a lot of the problem. Now, don't get me wrong, the forbearance is there for a reason, and there is clearly millions of people that are impacted. So my heart goes out to people that were impacted. That's who the forbearance option is for. They have no other choice. But there are people that weren't impacted. Their employment was still happening, but you know, they could just take advantage of it. Now the downside, the unintended consequence of that, is a lot of the credit tightening that we're seeing. Equity lines going away. They're still available, but lots of equity lines did go away. The Alt-A jumbo market kind of crunching and kind of freezing, seizing, was because of this risk, and the forbearance is part of that risk. So what happens is that loan servicers, you have a forbearance and you're supposed to make your payment, let's say $2,000 a month. You opt for the 3 months of forbearance, $2,000, $2,000, $2,000. So that's $6,000 that you've essentially kind of deferred. On month 4, there was nothing really black and white of like, here's what your plan was going to be. It was very vague. Okay, it might get extended. It might get put onto the back of the loan. So for me as a let's say as a borrower, that would make me nervous, because I don't want to have a balloon payment of $6,000 plus my $2,000. So now we have an $8,000 payment on month 4. Now the good news is that most loan servicers are working out a repayment plan, either spreading it out over the next 12 months, maybe adding it to the term. There's no really set rule on how loan servicers do it. And so that's the challenge. Now, here's the other caveat. This just was announced with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. In order to get new financing, so if you want to take advantage of the refi rates right now, or if you want to take advantage of purchase opportunities, you have to be current on your loan, either in a forbearance repayment plan, and have had to make 3 payments. So right now, there's a few clients that we had to, put pause on because they lost their jobs. They're back at work, but they had no choice and were in the forbearance. They have to start repayment like June 1st, and they're not eligible till they've made three payments on time. So it used to be 12 months, so they improved it, but that's kind of those unintended consequences.
So the lesson seems to be really only maybe go down that road if you have no other option.
Right. I definitely feel, I mean, the other possible, again, this is ever-changing landscape, is let's say you're a jumbo client. The jumbo timeline could be 12 months. It could be 24 months. Even though the CARES Act says that lenders can't report that delinquent, that doesn't mean it still doesn't get put into a delinquent profile when you're looking at new financing. No, it doesn't impact your credit rating, right? So that's a blessing, but it does impact future credit like that you could be getting. One thing we have to verify right now is that a client doesn't have any loans that are in forbearance when we're doing their financing, even non-subject property. So let's say they're refinancing their primary residence, or let's say they're buying a new primary residence and they have rental properties, and let's say they put those in forbearance. Guess what? That new purchase, they can't, that's an issue for the purchase. So again, this is all kind of ever-changing landscape, and that just got announced yesterday.
Oh, so we got breaking news on the show.
Yeah, we need a little beep, 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 breaking news.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
But that is interesting because, again, I think people hear the sound bites, the idea of like, oh, I can delay my payments for 3 months. And again, that on its face sounds great. But when you don't know what the unintended consequences are, it might not actually be that good of a situation for you. And again, we all know people who took advantage of doing it when, you know, maybe they could have gotten by, but everybody, it was such a dire time for everybody. But, you know, really kind of like Devin said, only doing it as maybe your last resort.
Yes, that has been my advice. And I've been very careful and empathetic, and really, I don't want people to think I'm coming across where I don't understand the struggle. I totally get it, and that's what it's there for. But if you can make it work, then maybe we could refinance you and save you $400, $300, $200 a month. And that, you know, add that up over, you know, 10 years or 3 or 4 years. I mean, I'd hate to lose that opportunity is my concern. It was really the unintended consequences. I knew there was going to be stuff happening that was going to start coming down the channels from Fannie, Freddie. And again, it continues to change. Yeah.
It all happened so suddenly. And again, there was no standard, right, to meet to do that. So of course, you would think over time, things would start revealing themselves.
Yeah, I mean, and there was, and I don't have to get into it, that's very weedy, is a lot of the secondary markets were really impacted. You know, the Fed was gobbling up and buying billions and billions of dollars per day in mortgage-backed securities, and that was creating a lot of challenges with the mortgage industry. So the mortgage industry was rocky. I mean, we kept closing loans and having great rates, but there was some rocky, scary times, and we're kind of past, I think, the worst part. But you know, it was yeah, lots of, you know, unintended consequences of the CARES Act, unintended consequences of Fed buying billions and billions of dollars in mortgage-backed securities, but it's mellowed out.
Yeah, good. Well, hey, that was all great updates from the lending standpoint and all things that are very relevant to us. And I think let's move into a little bit more some fun facts about Kelly. And Devin and I talk about this on our, you know, whenever we do this podcast. But one question is, we find that shelter-in-place quarantine has encouraged some people to try new things or discover new hobbies. What has that been for Kelly Marsh?
So outside of work, since you know me, I work a lot, but I love it. I love it. I do. I love it. I really am so driven by it. But I have created some really awesome cocktails. So my husband,
almost 5 o'clock. Getting close.
Talk somewhere. And yes. So my husband really likes Manhattans. And then we started talking about like, well, what's the difference between a Manhattan and an old fashioned? So I made, a Manhattan, and then I looked up how to make an old fashioned. And he's like, well, I like this one, but I like this one. So then what I did is I literally took the old fashioned and the Manhattan, and I made it together. And it's like my signature drink.
Wow.
It's really yummy. Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I had to write down the ingredients. It's a long list.
Does that require the muddling of the cherries and everything? The full?
So it's sugar. So like a tablespoon of sugar, and then I do orange bitters, and then I muddle. I had to buy a kit. I had to go on Amazon and get, a martini shaker and stir. And so at one point I was just making it in a glass, but sugar, orange bitters, and then you muddle it so it kind of gets like, you kind of want to get not a whole lot of orange bitters, like maybe like 6 or 7 drops. And then I add the bourbon, which is, depending on the day, it might be like a 4-to-1. So I pour, and then you add, and you mix it and add sweet vermouth. And then I put a little bit of the Luxardo cherry juice, just like a little tiny drop, and I stir it and stir it and stir it. And then you have to have the fancy square, the rock, the ice.
Right.
So then I pour that over. I think I got it all right. Yeah. Okay. Bourbon, sweet vermouth. I had to write this down, make sure I don't forget.
You don't have
orange
it memorized?
bitters, well, I do, but on camera, I don't want to miss anything. So Luxardo cherries. So then I do 1 cherry, pour it over the big rock, and then I do the orange peel. So it literally is the mix of an old fashioned and a Manhattan, and it's called an old Manhattan.
Wow, I love it.
I even am starting to like it.
Did you coin that? Is that your signature drink now?
Well, that's Mark's signature, my husband's signature drink. I have a new one for myself. I'm a vodka girl. So I sound really horrible right now, but this is my newest one. Kettle One has the botanicals line. So it has there's a Kettle One grapefruit and rose infused vodka. And then there's those ice waters. They're those sparkling waters. And there's a grapefruit flavored one. And you put it over ice. It's so refreshing. It's like a great summer drink.
Wow. Especially when it's been like 80 degrees out.
I know.
I do want to try one of those old Manhattans, so I'm going to have to somehow sneak the recipe out of you.
I know. It sounds expensive. How much am I paying for that at the bar, Kelly? That's like a $30 drink.
Well, my bar, it's free. It's totally free.
We'll have to have you throw it over the balcony. Be socially distant.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds good.
And and my other thing I do that I've been doing is I do these little diamonds. I actually have them right here. I wasn't going to show it, but so I'm not creative, but like this, it's tiny little diamonds. So I did one earlier that was 15,000 little diamonds. They're each little, isn't it cute?
Yeah, and if you go on to Kelly's social media, you can see her in the process of it, which is quite remarkable.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I don't know if I would have the patience, so bless your heart for doing it.
Yeah, it's kind of my exit from the world of mortgages and go over there and make myself a cocktail and start my diamond art.
It all goes together. That's awesome.
Right on. Hey, so Devin, real quick, we'll try to wrap this up here. Let's get into some of the real estate stats and what are you seeing out there in the real estate market? Maybe Kelly can chime in too.
Yeah, well, just a couple quick points. I'll keep it very brief. One thing that popped out to me was that in the last half of April, in April, half of the Montecito transactions were all cash. And I know, Montecito is used to seeing a fair bit of cash, but to me, this kind of touched on a couple of things we talked about earlier. One was, maybe some of those creative loans going away for the higher end folks. And then just, yeah, demand coming back to the luxury market. You know, we tracked a number of weeks there where anything over 2 million was kind of unheard of, and now we're seeing that come back pretty strong. And then the other thing I saw was a bunch of closings out at Winslow, which is the new construction development off 217 in Goleta. We saw that they had 12 closings out there, which is a pretty significant amount of their inventory. And that touches on kind of the other end of the market, right? Kind of the lower end, where some of these loans are a little bit easier to get. You're seeing a healthy demand on the low end from buyers as well. So that was really the only two points I wanted to bring up about the market. But maybe Kelly can touch on this. And I know we grazed over it earlier, but we're seeing a lot more, you know, purchase files coming through lenders. I know for a while there it was mostly refis, but Kelly, does it seem like it's kind of tilting a little bit back towards normal in that regard?
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely, we've seen a huge increase in our pre-approval requests and in the last couple weeks. And I think people are starting to feel comfortable, you know, going out there, and maybe job security. They feel like the worst is hopefully past us. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we've been seeing it as well, for sure. And there's still low down payment options. Please do not think you have to have 20% down. In some cases you do, but in, you know, you mentioned Winslow, you know, there's 5% down options. There's still some really, really great financing available, really.
And rates are still really low, right? I mean, you would call them historic levels, hovering around historically low levels.
Yes. Yeah, very low. Yeah, I mean, we were able to look at rates, you know, I not quoting them, but in the high 2s, low 3s range, depending on the scenario. So it's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And I think that might be an impetus too. I know I have some clients who are like, hey, I want to buy something right now when the rates are like this. So that's definitely a little bit of a push for some people who've obviously been looking already and still feeling confident about, you know, buying, especially somewhere like Santa Barbara, where we're just lucky we can be outside. Even in kind of a shelter-in-place community, we can be distanced from people but be outside. So I think that'll always draw people to our local market. All right, well, Kelly, I just want to thank you again so much. We know how busy you and your team are, and we were so shocked that you agreed to do this with us. So I can't thank you enough.
No, of course. I had to get ready though. You know, I was like, oh, I don't get to stay in my pajamas all day.
No, yeah, you look great. And a disclaimer, her background is not an artificial background. That is her real,
no, it's me.
Beautiful house. So we were fooled. We thought it was a background.
Yeah, leave it to a couple of guys to think that a house could never really look like that, you know.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for
Kelly.
having me.
It was
fun.
We got our A-list guest on our 3rd episode, so that's pretty cool.
Nice.
All right. Well, we are going to have to cheers to you next time we see you, Kelly.
Virtual cheers.
Virtual cheers.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, and we appreciate it. Stay safe out there.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.